Hey, welcome to the Consumer VC. I'm your host, Mike Gelb, and on this podcast where we discuss the intersection of venture capital and consumer innovation. If you're enjoying this show, also subscribe to my newsletter at theconsumervc.com to receive all episodes directly in your inbox and a weekly roundup of all the consumer venture deals happening. All content and episodes are for informational and entertainment purposes only and is not investment advice. Before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about aVenture, a new platform that's about to launch that's making venture capital available to the masses. It doesn't matter if you're accredited or non-accredited. aVenture provides an opportunity to diversify your investment portfolio and invest in private funds. If you're a fund manager, the aVenture app also provides everything you need in order to make startup investments, including extensive research materials, seamless transaction processes, and allocation measures so you can properly diversify your portfolio. Now, typically, venture capital and startup investments are liquid, which is a major pain point for our industry. aVenture is fixing this by offering periodic withdrawals for its investors. I and many others in this industry are so excited about this launch. They are preparing to list their first fund in the beginning of next year. So if you want to be the first to know, join their waitlist at aventure.vc. Thank you, CJ Fowler, for the introduction to our guest today, Yanni Hufnagel, founder and CEO of Lemon Perfect. Lemon Perfect is a super refreshing, full-flavored, hydrating lemon water with no sugar, artificial flavors, or sweeteners. I love it. I really enjoy drinking it. Big fan of the product. Yanni might have the most amount of energy and might be the most enthusiastic guest I've ever had on the show. We talk about him as a college basketball coach, what got him curious about lemon water, how he ended up founding Lemon Perfect and raised capital and built a network where he didn't have one in VCs. Also, how he was able to get into national distribution, as well as landing Beyoncé and other celebrities as investors. Without further ado, here's Yanni. Yanni, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you?
You know what? I'm feeling great. It's great being with you.
It's so great being with you, Yanni. I've been looking forward to this all week. Tell me a bit about the beginning. So, I know you're really into basketball. What actually led you to become like a basketball coach and also interested in like health and nutrition?
It's a great question. When I was 6 years old, it was at the I think the height of, I don't know if you remember the starting lineup figurines, and I would go under the covers with the starting lineups and coach the teams against each other. So I think my enthusiasm for coaching started early. And then, I played high school basketball. I also played lacrosse in high school and then in college. But the story, the basketball story is I got cut from my high school team going into my junior year, the varsity team.
Was that pretty devastating?
Yeah, it was traumatic. One of the early traumas, right, in my life, or short duration traumas anyway, because you absorb it, right? And as we continue to do 25 years later, you got to wake up the next day and take another step and figure it out, right? And so the next day, my step was to the principal's office. And I said, is there any way that we could record the games on the local access TV network, right? Could I go and do the color commentary? And I had a friend, Ed Cohen, who was going to do the play-by-play. And now Ed is the radio voice of the New York Knicks. So his career in sports broadcasting has certainly accelerated very, very nicely. But yes, we game one, Ed and I were on the call on Scarsdale Cable 72. And so I was back in the principal's office a few weeks later because I was yelling and screaming that the coach wasn't using his timeouts properly. So anyway, but I've always had an inflammable enthusiasm for coaching and for basketball. When I was at Cornell, I actually was in the varsity weight room for lacrosse, and I ran into one of the assistant basketball coaches, and we got into a big basketball conversation. And within a few weeks, I was a student manager for the men's basketball team, mopping sweat off the floor, and really that's how my coaching career started. I got an internship with the New Jersey Nets in the basketball operations department the summer after Cornell, and then the story continues from there. But I'm lucky in that here I am. 20 years since I've been a manager, and I'm still coaching. Just a larger team than a basketball team with certainly you could argue much bigger upside, but I'm having a lot of fun.
So what? And I know you like left, and you were also the assistant coach, I believe, at Oklahoma, and helped Blake Griffin as well, like develop and everything. And what made you decide? I know you were like flipping around different universities as an assistant coach. What led you to starting, Lemon Perfect, and kind of like the insight led you to starting a CPG business?
Yeah. Point of clarification. Blake Griffin helped Blake Griffin develop. I was fortunate enough to be on the court rebounding the basketball for Blake and for Taylor, his older brother. Hardest worker that I've ever been around. I mean, just tenacious, and has remained a good friend from the first pass that I threw to him, and is a major investor in Lemon Perfect, first round, pre-revenue. So grateful to my friendship with him. Mike, so I was a graduate assistant at Oklahoma. My first day of summer school was Blake's first day of summer school. My first day of summer school in the master's program, obviously Blake's first day of summer school in the undergraduate program. But I remember running upstairs and telling my mom, I think this is going to work out just fine. So 2 years at Oklahoma as a graduate assistant. I went to Harvard as an assistant coach for 4 years, Harvard for 4, Vanderbilt in the SEC for 1, Cal Berkeley in the Pac-12 for 2. And then my last stop coaching college basketball was at the University of Nevada in Reno. And that's where this idea was hatched. The short story, Mike, is I was on a recruiting trip to Santa Rosa Junior College. And towards the tail end of the trip, from Reno to Santa Rosa, you go through Petaluma at the end of the trip. And I'm a big coffee drinker and love Starbucks. And I saw a Starbucks in a strip mall out of the corner of my eye. I said, let me just stop in and grab a nice coffee for the rest of the trip. And in that same strip mall was a Max Nutrition, a GNC type of store. And I went in to get a couple of protein bars. And I was wearing my Nevada basketball polo. And the man working behind the register, his name is Matt. And he said, do you work for the team? I said, yes, I'm an assistant coach. And Matt said, my God, my dream, his eyes lit up. He said, my dream is to be a strength and conditioning coach for an NBA basketball team. And so I said, Matt, listen, I've got a great network. And if I can ever be helpful, let me know. Here's my card. Call me, text me, email me anytime. About a month later, Mike, he sent me a draft of a book that he was working on with a friend on the keto diet, the ketogenic diet, which this is late 2016. So really before keto was in the mainstream psychology of the American consumer, right? And it's certainly leveled off since. But in the back of Matt's book were all these sample meal plans. And every day started by drinking organic lemon water. And I was searching a little bit for some structure around my diet and workout routine. And I really liked Matt. So I said, I'm in, Matt, A through Z, let's do it. And organic lemon water in the morning became really a non-negotiable part of my daily routine. I'm not sure I understood all the health benefits at that time, but it was a great way to start the day, right? 2 things for me, make my bed and lemon water in the morning. And if you do those 2 things, or at least when I started doing those 2 things back to back, it really set the foundation for a really good day, right? And so what I will tell you though is that's a painful process if you're doing it on your own. The act of making lemon water in the morning, right? At least for me, buy organic lemons, cut the lemon, squeeze the lemon, juice all over, bland taste. I mean, most mornings you just throw your hands up in the air and you say, the hell with this. But I'm in the locker room. I stuck with it. I'm in the locker room, the video room, actually, towards the end of the season. And all of our players are drinking vitamin water, Gatorade. our coaching staff, actually, Coach Musselman and his wife, Danielle, they were on a buy kick, right? This is 2017 at the very height of Bai's growth story. And I just kind of had a moment. I said, hold on. Can we take organic lemon water and give it the flavor profile that resonates, right? And here's the truth. That seed of the journey, right? Great flavor that's also good for you, has been the bedrock of our brand from minute one. It's not like I ran out of the locker room though and said, "My God, I'm going to go start a beverage company," right? Like we're in the thick of the Mountain West race, and we ended up winning the Mountain West Tournament Championship, going to the NCAA tournament, losing to Iowa State in the first round in Milwaukee. And what generally happens, Mike, is after the season, the assistants take a couple of days just to catch their breath before getting back out on the recruiting trail. And my couple of days were in Santa Monica, California. I was staying with a friend, John, and we were at M Street Kitchen on Main Street in Santa Monica having lunch. And I said, John, what do you think of this idea, right? And remember, all we knew at the time, or all I knew at the time, was lemon water in the morning. And John said, he said something, he's a very entrepreneur friend, and he said something that, has basically changed my life and the life of many others. He said, anything that you can build that can capture a piece of someone's daily routine, what they do in the morning when they first get up, what they do at night when they go to sleep, or any point B, C, D, E in between is worth going for. And Mike, I jumped up from the table. I said, John, I'm going for it, right? And that night I Googled how to start a beverage brand. True story. And what I would tell you is the moments from April of 2017 to a shelf-stable formulation were painful and dark. But somehow, some way, we were able to walk through that darkness, take another step and another step. And now here we are building something that, we think can be as big as any emerging beverage brand has ever built.
Thank you so much for walking us all through that. And it's so interesting because I had on Chris, the founder of AG1, and it's interesting because he also wanted to, even though of course Lemon Perfect and AG1 is complete, two very different products, but the notion about this is a routine and part of your morning routine, it's similar, right? And you see, like, I feel like a number of brands that are trying to kind of capture this of, hey, let's actually build our product into a habit, and this is the reasons why it should be part of your daily habit, right?
No question. And what they've done is remarkable. I mean, you're talking about, one of the gold standards in all of consumer in terms of the business that they've built and the loyalty or the fandom that they have. So major props to them for the business that they've built. But yes, they've captured routine, right? Something that you do every morning that you wake up, but not only routine, Mike. What they've captured is a routine around health and wellness and feeling good, right? AG1, the nutritional deck of that product is incredible. I'll make the same argument for the superfood power of lemons and hydration in the morning, right? Before your morning coffee, or anytime hydration in the case of now Lemon Perfect. But not only are AG1 and Lemon Perfect great part of your routine, daily routine, they're also good for you, right? So you can watch TV every night. That's a part of your daily routine. I would argue that's probably not great for you. So and again, I'm not, listen, that's the science would tell you that watching TV at night before you go to sleep, if that's what you do, is probably not the best thing for you. And I pulled that one out. I think there are probably other daily routines that are more damaging than watching TV at night. But the point is that AG1 Lemon Perfect, daily routine, box checked, good for you, box checked. And that's a circle that is hard to jump into. And I think why you see the enthusiasm, not only from consumers, but from investors retailers, distributors for both products.
So let's take it back to that moment, right? When you jumped up and you said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to build this business. When you kind of captured that moment of figuring out that, okay, yes, this is a very, great product that's helped me in my life, taking it every day. But not only that, it can also be a routine product or like a new habit for a consumer. So kind of like check that, okay, maybe there's actually something here. Maybe it has legs. After you went and started Googling how to actually build a CPG product, like what were your first steps afterwards?
Painful ones. Mike, the first step was naming the product. And that was challenging, right? I didn't want to invest, Mike, big dollars because they were my dollars. And I didn't make a lot of money coaching college basketball. The last couple of years were good, but I knew that before we thought about product, we should think about name and IP because you need that first. So that took me some time. I actually registered the domain name Lemon Perfect on a street corner in Paris, June 13th, 2017. My dad is from France. Because of the schedule of college basketball, you go from your season to recruiting and then back to the season. Like there's no time off ever. I hadn't been to France with my dad in a few years. And so it was a really special trip. And we were at the Peninsula Hotel on a beautiful summer day. It was me, my mom, and my dad. And I was really stuck on name. And I don't know, Mike, we took a left out of the hotel. And as I'm walking down a street in Paris, the name, boom, just came to me. And, I honestly, from my iPhone, and remember, this is like where I think in 2017, I still think data was like $10 a minute, like overseas, like international, right? But there it was. And it said, domain name available. And for $11, we registered the domain name June 13th, 2017. I consider that day one. I really do. I consider that day one. And then when I got back home, we started thinking about, or I started trying to figure out who was going to help us with the initial formulation. And with a couple of false starts only, we ended up finding a group of beverage formulators that we're still with today. Shout out Marty Molina at OBI and his group. But I tried the product for the first time August 28th, 2017. And I knew, Mike, right away that we had something really special because we won on taste and we won on nutritional deck. And you have to check those two boxes for sure before you can start to think about the third box, which is packaging, and the fourth box, which is people. But you have to win on product, okay? And we got that right. Right away. One revision, we actually took down the sweetness a little bit, and then we had it nailed. And we figured out. I have a very Main Street USA palate, if you will, and I think that served us well as we've thought about product and flavor.
It's also interesting, and I'm kind of curious, did you always think about the product always being a liquid? And what I mean by that is when I think about hydration in this space, especially maybe what's going on in 2017, there's quite a few hydration powders, right? Like liquid IV and kind of different, ones there. Was kind of actually having it already, in water diluted or just, as its product itself, was that always kind of part of the plan? Or did you ever think that there was another way to actually present the product?
I think I would answer that early on, I think I had a lot of different ideas for where Lemon Perfect could go, right? I mean, Mike, I think I'm embarrassed to say it, but in our original deck, our pre-seed round, I said that Lemon Perfect could become lip balm and deodorant and a powder and sunscreen. I don't even know what else I had on the list. A couple clips on my monitor here, I could go through it. It is fascinating and fun to look back on. Again, remember, I didn't know anything when we started. I'm 5 years in and I have my PhD in beverage. But what I will tell you, Mike, is it didn't take me long to memorize 3 ticker symbols: KO, PEP, and KDP. And all they care about is liquid volume. And I would tell you that I think we realized, or at least I realized early on, that if we're going to put ourselves through the pain of this journey, we're going to certainly dream in the biggest possible way. And the biggest possible way is liquidity to one of the big soda strategics. And they are built for liquid distribution.
Got it. And so it was actually more of a thought process around kind of actually taking like, what's the end goal ultimately? And so, or where do you see this most succeeding in the long term? Which then it would be an exit towards, one of the big beverage companies, which actually makes a lot of sense.
Sure. And what I'll say, Mike, is those are 3 paths to liquidity, right? There are others, right? So, who knows where the story plays out, and we're a long way from that. But what I will tell you is any entrepreneur that raises $1 of capital or hires one person better have a damn good idea of where they want to end up. And I had a good idea, or a great idea, of where I wanted Lemon Perfect to end up before we sold 1 bottle.
So you're experimenting with flavors, and as you say, it took a few tries, but you got the right mix and an amazing tasting product, and also were able to find a co-manufacturer as well for it. Like, after that, is that when you raise your pre-seed, or when were you thinking about raising capital, and what were also kind of like the first steps in terms of how you thought about your different sales channels?
Yeah. So what happened, Mike, was I worked with a small little agency on packaging at the beginning. And the work was the work was not very good. We got what we paid for. We spent a few $1,000s on it. And then I was in Los Angeles, and I saw a bunch of print ads on bus stops for Ritual, the women's vitamin, and at the time, women's vitamin. They've now added a men's multivitamin. And I said, my God, that's excellent branding. And then I went on a quest to figure out who built that branding. And I found the woman. She was actually full-time with Ritual at the time, but was open to some consulting work on the side. And I met with her at Dinosaur Coffee in Silver Lake. She was reluctant to take on new projects. I will tell you that by the end of that coffee, she took on Lemon Perfect. But she built the updated branding, or what I would say the A to B. We're now C in terms of our visual aesthetic. But when I looked at her hourly rate, and deservedly so, I said, okay, I'm either staring a big American Express bill in the face that I'm not sure if I can pay back, or we got to go raise some economics.
And this is, by the way, sorry to interrupt, but this is by the way, like, you don't have any product on shelf, right? You're still like building the brand, like, you don't. Is that right?
The way I was sampling product was Marty would send me half-gallon jugs. I was buying 4-ounce bottles on Amazon, and I was filling those 4-ounce bottles and closing them myself, and then running around New York City with a leaky cooler. And that's how we served samples at the beginning to all of our early investors. And so there was that we were so far away from commercializing the product, Mike, at that time. And look, we raised our first dollar on a one sheet of bottle design, and 4-ounce bottles that I was filling in my kitchen. And what I would tell you is my first investor meeting was in Naples, Florida. And this was November of 17. And let me just actually back up. When I went to go raise, I didn't know how to raise 5 cents, Mike. And so I went to one of my venture friends and I said, Vasu, what do I do? How do I do this? He said, you're going to raise this as a convertible note. I said, a convertible what? He said, how much money do you think you need to raise? I said, I have no idea how much money I have to raise. So that's how this started. And in that first meeting in Naples, Florida, I was down there because our sweetener supplier, that's where their HQ was. I wanted to build a relationship with them. And our sales guy said, I know this guy. He's looking to invest. He just sold his business. He threw me out of his house in about 10 minutes. And I remember sitting in his driveway with Mark Eisenacher, and Mark damn near crying, saying, Mark, I got to go back and coach college basketball. I don't know. That was maybe a Tuesday or a Wednesday. I met with the next meeting I had was on a Friday in Manhattan. And it was at Smith's on the Upper West Side. And I sat down he was a friend of a friend. And I sat down with him and he said, my God, I love the product. I said, Danny, that's awesome. He said, listen, I'm in. I just need to check with my wife. And Mike, all I had was that 4. So I was living with my mom and dad. I moved back with my mom and dad at the time. And so I'm on the Upper East Side. He's on the Upper West Side. I literally, Mike, I sprinted across Central Park to run home and because I didn't want to wait for the bus, and I came back. His wife tried the product. Kids tried the product. That night, he called me. He said, I want to invest $50,000. And hey, I've got a couple of other friends that are interested here. And listen, we ended up raising $1.2595 million from 40 unbelievable friends and family. And without that group, we certainly wouldn't be in the position that we're in today. But they took a bet at the time where if you take everything out except for my enthusiasm in the product, they should have put those dollars anywhere else. But I commend them for believing in the product and believing in me. And you're talking about a group that I think when this thing is all said and done, we'll be looking at 40, 50, or 60x return on capital.
That's incredible. How you're able to raise, over $1 million there. And they had such belief in you and also belief in the product, even though, this was your first time starting a beverage company, right? And so, but they kind of knew that, or hoped that you were just going to figure it out because you had such an amazing product itself, and obviously seemed like an eye as well for what really good branding is too.
Yeah, I mean, look, we got our packaging right. I mean that's a whole nother story, Mike. I moved out. So anyway, once we had the first 1.2 million, I moved out to Southern California because I felt like that was the best place for Lemon Perfect to launch, right? You have, pretty dense natural channel retailer action there. And what I will tell you is when I went out to Southern California, we ran our first product, HPP. Okay, so a keep refrigerated product. That's how this thing started. And I put a pressure sensitive label on keep refrigerated product. And Mike, when the bottles came off the line for the first time, line is a generous word. I think we were probably filling, I'm going to say about 20 bottles a minute. It was a 6-head filler. So today we run 600 bottles a minute for perspective. But when I looked at the packaging in my hands, I had a really low moment. I said, my God, I don't think this works on the shelf. And it was the first learning for me, Mike.
Why
something looks like.
Why didn't you think it worked on what were like some of the traits?
Not enough color, not enough visual architecture in terms of messaging. It just felt medicinal and plain. And you only get one shot to launch, right? Like you get one shot, right? And I mean, listen, obviously you could have multiple but you really get one opportunity to announce yourself to the world. And you have to make, as an entrepreneur, if you're going to somehow, some way, especially in food and beverage, but if you're going to actually cross the finish line as the last team standing, you've got to make some big decisions along the way. And then you also have to get some very fortuitous bounces. We've done both, right? We've made some really big bets that have paid off, and we've gotten lucky bounces. Now, deciding to not launch and change the packaging was the first big bet. So I had 40 investors. And remember, they had been waiting. I mean, this is like, we're talking about, at this point, June, July of 2018. And we had an authorization in Bristol Farms. So part of the reason why I moved to Southern California is because my college roommate, his brother was on the management team at Bristol. And so I said, my God, at least I think we've got a chance to get into 12 stores, 13 now. Roger, the buyer, he loved the produce buyer. And I called 40 investors and Roger at Bristol Farms. And I said, we're going to delay our launch and we're going to figure out our packaging. And it was tough, Mike. It's really tough. And I only had one bullet, right? Like I had to figure out who was the best partner here to go redesign our packaging. And we work with Frank Collective in Los Angeles. They also have an office in New York. And there's a cool story here. We were having some trouble and I didn't know what to do. And so I went on Amazon, Mike, and I got a tray of poker chips. And the next meeting that I had with Frank Collective, I took the chips out, I put them on the table, all of them. And I said, I'm all in. I got nowhere else to turn. And the next week we built what the framework of what you see in the marketplace today. And when we did end up launching the brand in September of 2018, very quickly, we established proof of concept. Now we supported it. Mike, we said we're going to be an inch deep and a mile wide from day one. And we crushed it in Bristol. We crushed it in Lazy Acres. We crushed it in Erewhon. And then we took the data of those 22 stores. We got Whole Foods in the Southern Pacific region. We got Whole Foods in the Northeast, and then boom, 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 boom. But if we don't change the packaging, we don't survive in advance. And that was one of what I call 3 big decisions that we made that have allowed us to continue to be in the position that we're in today and building what we believe will be a billion-dollar beverage business.
Thanks for that story, Yanni. And I also just appreciate how you thought about scaling as well in the natural channel. And just how you also, love to kind of actually learn more about how you think about sales channels kind of overall, and in terms of which retailers make sense for Lemon Perfect, as well as when you think about the price of your product, your approach there, and just overall, just how you think about like your kind of omni-channel strategy.
Yeah, I mean, for Lemon Perfect, every channel is important, right? What I will tell you is, as soon as we went shelf stable, and that was big bet number 3. Big bet number 2 was between changing the packaging and going shelf stable, I had a lot of darkness. Even though we saw some early turns, I was struggling hiring. I was struggling running the business. And Mike, I was in such a dark place, I almost took myself out of the CEO seat. I found someone to help me run the company, and I would go be chief X officer. And at the midnight hour, there was a signed DocuSign. This particular person, he had signed the DocuSign. And I woke up the next morning and I basically said, if we're going to do this, I'm going to take it. And I'm either going to walk out of my office in a Rolls Royce, or I'm going to be carried out in a box. And that's the truth. And we really haven't looked back since that day. But to number 3, so we go shelf stable, right? And Mike, the reason why we did that is because you can't win in beverage cold. Game over. Especially now as you have less distribution in the cold chain. I mean, you could listen, like there can be, I mean, we saw it with Suja. There could be some sort of transaction, but not a big one. And so I recognized that early on. We were living in the produce set, but you can't build the display activity, and you can't get everywhere from a distribution perspective unless you're dry, unless you're shelf stable. So in essence, what we did is we canceled all of our meetings at the end of, or the summer of 2019. We had a meeting with Target, with the produce buyer. We had a lot of action, and we ended up canceling them all and instead going into the lab and figuring out how to come out with shelf-stable versions of Lemon Perfect. And I would tell you that the shelf-stable version of Lemon Perfect is better than the original HPP product. So go back to channels. So we knew we wanted to play in enhanced water, right? Big category, 2 major transactions. Vitamin water, 2007, $4.2 billion. By 2017, $1.7 billion. Right? We go back to this concept of flavor, right? And so we sent product to a bunch of retailers, conventional retailers, really just throwing the football down the field and hoping that someone would run under it. And we sent samples to Publix. And that was our big moment when Publix took a chance on us. Jeff Smith, who was the category manager then, took a big chance on us. Jeff is no longer on the desk. He's at Publix. He's become a great friend. And that's the thing, Mike. Sometimes you just need one person to bet on you in a big way, and it can change the landscape of everything. But anyway, Publix takes a chance on us, and they don't tell us, hey, we're going to test you in 100 stores, 200 stores, 300 stores. All 1,250. Lemon Perfect going in. Okay. Mind you, We had just started running shelf-stable product. This is January of 2020. Interesting timing. So how about this? If we stayed cold for even another few months, COVID hits, and you have massive dislocation. If we don't pivot at that time, we go home. That's it. Game over. We go home. We were one of the last brands to go into Amazon's warehouse before they started shutting it down to new brands for a period of months. Think about that.
Wow.
And I like to tell the story of us having product on the floor in a lot of places and for shelf-stable product. Okay, and listen, everything else in the store was wiped out when COVID hit. Here's Lemon Perfect. And shoot, if you're the last thing in the store, people are going to buy you. So we were able to get a bunch of movement just because no one knew who we were. We were the last product in the store. But we were just literally able to put pallets in stores and there was nothing else left. But anyway, we get the Publix opportunity early 2020, and we just said we have to go after it and support this business. And, we put 7 people against the business in the market on day one. Publix now is an incredible retailer for us amongst a bunch of others. But you're talking about double-digit, dollar and unit share in Publix, a little over 2 years in. It's a remarkable, remarkable story.
It really is. And it's also just really interesting, the timing of it, as you say, January 2020, shifting towards shelf stable. And see actually, the tailwind of COVID that's actually worked out for the better for your company, which is pretty interesting too. How that all happened.
We've had to battle through a lot, Mike. I mean, think about it. You've got COVID-19, right? And the dislocation that the pandemic caused, right? And that's challenging, right? You're trying to get retailers to meet with you. You're trying to sign distributors. You can't meet with anyone in person. You can't energize, your distributor partners. And then, you go from that to 40-year high inflation, right? I mean, think about, and in the midst of all of that, geopolitical unrest. I mean, we have battled through, just such an incredibly turbulent time. And it really has hardened us and made us tougher. And now, all of a sudden, you get a really nice inflation print this morning, or yesterday, I'm sorry. And the days they run together, Mike, when you're in this chair. But, maybe there's some clearing now at a more macro level, right? But what is certain is that even through the face of all of that, what we've had to battle through, Lemon Perfect is smoking hot. And we've been able to build a lot of momentum. So now I think for me and for our entire organization, how exciting is the idea of actually having, runway without, macro hurdles to have to continue to jump over, right, Mike? It's a lot easier to sprint a 100-meter dash than to hurdle 100 meters, right? You can get, it's not only easier, but it's also, you're going to get to the finish line a little bit faster. So, that's what I would equate it to, right? Hopefully some of the obstacles that we can't control, right? I mean, start to ease. We're seeing that on the supply chain now. We didn't take price last year, which is now proving to be a really good decision for us, because we've been able to increase our share in the category, as other brands have seen unit share decline.
No, thanks for walking us through that. How as well just overall have you thought about the category of of just hydration in general? Like how do you even think about how the category has? I mean, obviously, by hydration, when you think about hydration, you obviously think water first. But how do you think about like some of the other players that have come into the space and where kind of Lemon Perfect sits, maybe on price or just what have you?
Yeah, I mean, Mike, for us, we play in enhanced water, right? We consider that category, our competition, right? So, buy vitamin water, Propel, Hint, Roar. That's the group that we're playing against. Vitamin water has a massive share of the category. Call it 44 to 46, both on dollars and on units. Just massive share. But it's a category that has seen really no innovation since what Ben and Ken did at Buy in call it the early 2010s, right? Like we believe that we're bringing real innovation to a stale category by checking all of the relevant consumer boxes, right? Being at the forefront of a lot of it, right? We are the first enhanced water brand to ever be plastic neutral. That is something that came into effect for us October 1st. We're very, very proud of that. But we're the only squeezed from real fruit, zero sugar, full of flavor, plastic neutral product in the market. And, when you layer one on top of one on top of one on top of one, it's proving to be a really good formula for us, and it's resonating with the consumer. Look, I would argue that our sales strategy is as sophisticated as any emerging brand in beverage, led by Jim Brennan, our president and chief revenue officer, who had a storied career at Coke. Brian Arcus, our senior vice president of field sales and distribution. We've got an incredible leadership group across the business, but certainly on the sales side. And we've been able to set a strategy that has allowed us oftentimes to remove price as a barrier to trial, okay, without sacrificing, our margin math. And, that's obviously a hard paradigm, but we figured out price. We've certainly figured out packaging. We've certainly figured out product, and I'll put our people up against anyone. And so we've got the 4 Ps. But Mike, having said that, we've got a lot of work to do. I can assure you that the incumbent players in the space and the brands that live behind us in terms of share, everyone is trying to fight for a piece of our magic that we're putting out there right now.
So I know also you have, a number of celebrities that have invested in your company as well. And a lot of kind of high profile people. What are your thoughts around taking money from celebrities? How also have you maybe worked with them or not worked with them in regards to Lemon Perfect?
Mike, I haven't made one solicitous phone call since I started Lemon Perfect. Not one. Not around in investing or investors, and not around people of influence. The inbounds have come to me because of a true, love and admiration of the product. The packaging, right? And so, and what I will tell you is, maybe, the first couple of rounds notwithstanding, but once we got a little momentum and traction and real data story, I would tell you that each financing has been, when you think about risk reward and adjusted returns, I would tell you that we've had really good opportunities for investment. And I think that's how our celebrity partners have looked at Lemon Perfect first is, hey, this is a really interesting opportunity, right? I mean, venture is challenging. You're going to have probably, more zeros than heroes. But I think people look at this opportunity, the investment teams around our partners, and they think that this has a chance to be a hero. And so when you think about where we can scale the business, we've always tried to prioritize finding a really good balance of raising at a higher valuation, but also making sure that our investors feel really good about their entry points. We've oversubscribed all 6 financings. So I guess I've done a poor job as a market maker, but the truth is that we're proud, to have such an incredible group of capital partners, of which our celebrity capital partners are a part. And Mike, look, we've got celebrity partners that have chosen to remain unnamed in these financings. And then we have celebrity partners that have allowed us to publish, their name as it pertains to the financing. And, Beyoncé is one of those names, and we're incredibly proud and honored and humbled and grateful to have her be a part of our story. But we've got 300 incredible capital partners. Smallest check to invest was $5,000 in our pre-seed. And we have, a capital partner that has put over $8 million in the business now. So, it's a big spread, big range. But what I will tell you is all of our investors, they become a megaphone for our mission. And when you have such a big group of stakeholders, it certainly helps propel the business forward.
What has been, because I know that now, you're much more of a growth stage company. You're no longer an early stage company in thousands upon thousands of stores nationally. How has your role, do you feel, as CEO changed from an early stage brand and growth stage? And what's been like the hardest part right now in this stage of the business for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you hire great people and then you let them run, right? And so now my job now is more around, hire the just vision, right? Culture. Right? How do I run around America and energize our entire organization? Right? I mean, and that's that, Mike, I think is my superpower, my strength. Right? A lot of work on, what I would call the supply chain side of our business, contract manufacturing agreements. And Neha Soy, who runs supply chain for us, is an absolute killer and has done an incredible job. Look, Mike, we've raised, a lot more than the 1.2595 million that I talked about early in the episode. I think publicly right now we're at, $42 million. We have raised more than that. And so, and with that, our balance sheet has never been better than it is in this moment today. But I got to think about the entire business. I got to, at the end of the day, I got to be the one to stamp, just about everything that we do. But it's just a stamp, Mike. You got to let your people run and make decisions. And yeah, pulling back from the weeds, the day to day. It's challenging, right? Because it's just my nature that you want to make sure you're involved in it. But I love our group. And so, yes, as the business scales, it's harder to see everything every day. And you just got to trust your people. And that's why people is really your product at the end of the day, right? Like it's everything that we do now is about, the people and culture that we have in the organization.
I appreciate that. And I think that's a great note to end on. Yanni, thanks again so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate your time.
Mike, that was awesome. What an hour.
And there you have it. It was awesome chatting with Yanni and having him on the show. Yanni, thanks again so much for coming on. I highly recommend following him on Twitter at @Hufnagel. and also enjoying some Lemon Perfect. Thanks for listening, folks. If you also love this content and learning more about consumer startups and VC, subscribe to the newsletter at theconsumervc.substack.com, also available in show notes. Thanks for listening.